discussion, starting with who are we, and then going through karma theory. So, we kind of have an understanding of the soul, the process of yoga, and technology doesn't work. Last week Ed did modes of nature, and we talked about different modes. Some people believe people to be God. Some people believe, different spirits to be God. So people have weird conceptions of God. And so we thought it would be a good idea to have this week's topic, based on what God is really, according to Vedic perspective. So we know that the soul's natural position, natural qualities is eternal, cognizant, and blissful. And so for such a spiritual being, what are some of the activities? They're definitely not politics, not entertainment, and not sports. So there must be some kind of higher order or a higher activity that the soul has. And then we talked about this in our first lecture, that the process of yoga is about connecting the soul to the Supreme Soul, or God. And so that activity is loving relationship with God. Now, people ask questions if there is really God. There are lots of questions. And so we know from creation, there has to be a creator. If there is law, there has to be a lawmaker. If there is an organization, there needs to be somebody who actually is the organizer. So there was a story, Newton once built this nice solar system in his room. And his friend, who was an atheist, he came over. And Newton was like, hey, check this out, solar system. And it's like, oh wow, who made it? I was like, well, it just happened to be there. It's like, yeah, I get it, but who made it? It's like, well, it was just there. And it's like, okay, jokes apart, really, who made it? And it's like, okay, you don't believe that there is a creator for this complicated universe, but this tiny solar system that's like fits in my room, you're questioning that who made it. So that kind of tells us that there's always cause and effect. If there's a cause, if there's effect, there needs to be a cause for that. So there's the universe, the solar system. There are the seasons. These are all in order. Our human life, birth, old age, disease, death, happens to every single person. There is always an order. There is always, everything is perfectly organized in place. So there are some people who say it's all random. It just happened to be there. It was a chance. And if this is the timeline we talked about in the karma theory class, and in this infinite timeline, there are lots of events that are happening, and those are lifespans. And maybe some events that happen once in 2 billion years. And guess what? We live 60 to 70 years, so we might not even see it in our lifetime. Or maybe we see it once in our life and we think it's a random event. But we don't know in the whole context what the higher principle is for that event. So the story of the 6 blind men and the elephant. There were 6 blind men. I'm guessing most of you know the story, right? So, whoever is perceiving whichever part of the elephant sees it like that. Somebody sees it as a wall, somebody sees it a fan, or a rope, or a spear. So, and are they wrong? No. I mean, not completely right, but not completely wrong either. So where they are, according to their time, place, and circumstance, they see things as it is. But then they're making a decision about the whole elephant, which is not correct. So there needs to be somebody who has vision and comes and says, hey, this is an elephant, and you're just figuring out parts of it. That's not the whole thing. So I'll talk about 4 defects, which is common to all of us. So we all have limited senses with which we try to gain knowledge, understand things, the sense of inquiry, everything, every time we see something, it's the 5 senses that we use. But that's very limited. We can, for example, we can hear a certain frequency. We can see certain color range. We cannot see beyond this wall. Um, there's phenomena like refraction. We see a spoon in a glass of water, and the spoon is bent, and we know that that's because it's a phenomenon. We know, we have that knowledge. But a child might be like, oh my God, that spoon is bent as soon as you put it in water. So there's a difference between ignorance and knowledge. Now a parent who is seeing it through the limited senses, the same thing, he can tell the child like, no, that's a refraction phenomenon, because he's giving more importance to knowledge than our limited senses. Because of the limited senses, we make mistakes. In statistics, there are always the alpha errors, the beta errors. Any kind of scientific experiment we do, there are errors. So anything we do, we are prone to make mistakes. That's a fact. And because we make mistakes, there's something called illusion. An illusion, how it's defined, is to accept what is not and to reject what is. So if we are completely certain about our senses and what we see, what we perceive is correct, and that we can never make mistakes, we fall into the illusion, like the mirage. We think there is water in the middle of the desert, but there might not be. And as we run towards it, we don't find it. So that's the illusion. And because of these three things, automatically we have a cheating propensity. And that cheating propensity, or propensity to basically say that what I know is right, I don't care what other people think, but my perception is correct. So all the three above is correct. And that leads to, it's not a very honest position to be, not a very open position to be. So based on these things, if you're trying to understand the supreme truth, which is beyond our mind and senses, it's really impossible to understand that. And it's going to be mixed with a lot of mistakes and errors. So we don't get the full picture of the elephant. We get the little bits and parts, and with that we try to imagine what God is, or whatever outside our imagination is, like that. So, because it's Vedic Vision Society, we are focusing on the Vedic view, the Vedic perspective. And summary of all the Vedas is Bhagavad Gita. And in Bhagavad Gita, it is described nicely about Krishna and Krishna speaking to Arjuna personally, and it's described about himself, his characteristics, and there are several other texts like Srimad Bhagavatam or Brahma Samhita, where it's very nicely defined who God is and characteristics and details. So we'll talk about that. So by definition, in Brahma Samhita, it is stated there are two things. He's a cause of all causes. So there was no cause for God. If there was a cause for God, that would be God. So this is the primordial person who's the cause of all causes, from whom everything emanates. The creation, us, everything emanates from that cause. And without equal or superior. It's intuitive. So, given that, there are three aspects of God, as defined in the Vedas. There's the Brahman aspect, the Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And I'll go through them. So we talked about our traits, the eternal, cognitive, and full of bliss. So that comes from God, right? So that's the source. So in the Brahman feature, there's eternality part that is exhibited. In Paramatma, there's eternality plus cognizance. And then Bhagavan, all three of them are present in fullness. So think of Brahman as, it is the all-pervading nature of God. Brahman means spiritual. Everything around you, everything that we're in, is spiritual. So let's say, wherever I touch in my body, it's part of me. There's a sense of I am, I exist. And so for God, everything that's in the creation, that's there is no place where there is no God. So that impersonal, formless, attributeless energy feature of God is Brahman. So it's described in the Vedas as the sun and the sunshine. So the Brahman feature is like the sunshine. But there's a sun disk from which that sunshine is emanating. So another example is mountain. So when you're flying through a mountain range, you see like something in the distance, some kind of hazy form. As you go closer, you see the peaks and the valleys. And then when you land on the mountain, you actually see the trees, the grass, the animals, the details of the mountain. So the next stage is Paramatma, which has very particular characteristics. So he's the overseer and the witness. So every soul, Paramatma in English translation with super soul. So every soul has a super soul guiding that soul. Because we are spiritual in nature, it's not natural for us to deal with matter or material energy. So one of the functions of Paramatma is to facilitate that. Whatever desires we have, whatever wishes we have, and given our karmic credit within that limit, he makes it happen. So let's say I want to be the president of United States, but my karma is this much, right? So I get to be the president of my family, whatever, our small student group. So we have the desire, we have karma, and accordingly, Paramatma allows things to happen, sanctions. He's the overseer. He's also the witness. So there is good, bad, things we do, things we desire. He's witnessing constantly in our lives. And so we talked about karma, right? So who keeps track of all that karma? That's Paramatma's function. And then he also provides memory, intelligence, and forgetfulness. So people would ask, why forgetfulness? Now let's say if we remember all our past lives, that we were a goat or fish or we got strangled or killed, it'd be a terrible thing to remember all these things and very confusing. This is my wife here, and then, man, I had 20 million other wives from other births. It'd be very difficult. So he provides forgetfulness because for our own benefit. And of course, memory and intelligence is, of course, necessary. But another way we can actually perceive Paramatma is sometimes we call inner voice. There is inspiration that strikes. I used to write poetry when I was at high school, and there would be like moments when like, bam, there's an inspiration that comes. Beethoven, for example, creative people, or even not creative, you're doing your homework and you could have solved this thing and suddenly something inspires and it works. Sometimes we're doing something wrong and there's something inside that says, you might not want to do that. But Paramatma by nature is neutral. So he doesn't take part in our activities. He doesn't push us. He just, there's this inner voice and that's about it. If we want to, let's say, kill somebody, whose fault is it? The Paramatma is allowing us to do it. We are doing it, but he's allowing us to do it. If you want to do something good, he's allowing us to do it. And that's his position. And let's say I want to kill, I don't want to say this, but some big political leader, right? And I don't have the karmic credit to do that. But I want to. Will that happen? Not necessarily. So the point is karma, and then there is function. And whatever our desires are, he lets it happen. And it's completely very much in the material realm. And then comes the Bhagavan feature, which is a very personal aspect. And it combines the Sat, Chit, and Ananda, three qualities. And the bliss part comes, the Ananda part that comes is from relationship, comes from love. Without relationship, our lives are pretty much empty. And guess what? Where does it come from? Now, you wouldn't be praying to some energy. You wouldn't be praying something that doesn't reciprocate, doesn't have feelings, right? So when you're praying to the personal aspect of God, which is Bhagavan. And it makes sense then, because there's a personality who has feelings, who has desires, who's opulent. And so there's everything that you can think of that's in us. A lot of people say that God is formless, but if we have form and God doesn't, that makes God inferior to us. So by default, this is the most complete form of God. So the opulences, it's described in Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna, So there are 6 opulences: strength, wealth, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. And even one of them, if we have, people become attractive, right? And imagine Bill Gates. He has a lot of money. So by default, he's very attractive. Or let's say Arnold Schwarzenegger. Strong guy, people there are fads there, and if somebody has one or two of them, oh man, they're very attractive. But imagine somebody who has all of these in fullness. That makes that person extremely attractive. And the word for God, that's why in the Vedas, is Krishna, which means all attractive. Akarshati iti Krishna, which means all attractive. And so the way we understand and the process of yoga is it's called a Krishna conscious process. So every aspect of our life, the activity that I talked about, that if you're a spirit soul, what is the higher activity? The higher activity is to connect everything that we do in our lives, connect back to Krishna, the source of everything, the cause of all causes. And there is reciprocation. And so there is a constant process of back and forth. There's a relationship. The relationship is already there from that side to here. It's just from our side. It's just cleaning that up and regaining that relationship with God. And so I'll keep it short so there's more time for Q&A. It's a very interesting topic, and I'm happy that you came. This is a picture of Krishna with all kinds of relationships. Here's the friendly relationship. There are the cows who are serving Krishna. There are the gopis who are in conjugal relationship. Here's a picture of Krishna's parents. So there's parental affection. So God has five main relationships. There's awe and reverence, so people who are like, wow, that's amazing, that's God. There is servitude, so people who like to serve God. There's friendship. So we saw the gopas, the cowherd boys. There's parental affection, and the topmost one is conjugal love, which is Radha and Krishna and the Krishna and gopis. So that's them. Okay, questions? I'm sorry, I didn't ask you. This is the first time here, right? What's your name?
Sneha.
Sneha, nice to meet you. No questions? I was expecting you would at least ask something, right?
Maybe I'm digesting.
Maybe I went too fast.
Can you just explain about Brahman and Paramatma? What comes from it?
Sure. So tell me what you understood, and then I can fill in.
I'm a bit confused.
Okay. So Brahman is the impersonal feature of God. That's the energy, the all-pervading, all-existential feature of God. And Paramatma is a more personal, but not really fully. It's a neutral feature of God who sits in our heart and is guiding us and allowing us to perform our activities. Does it help?
So Bhagavan means he has both, it's included.
Yeah, Bhagavan includes everything. These are features of Bhagavan. So think of the sun. If sun is Bhagavan, sun has the sun disk, which is a Paramatma feature, and then sun has the sun rays, which is a Brahman feature. Does it make sense? So there are different aspects. It's one God. It's not like three gods. One God with different aspects. So President Obama, for example, so I'll tell you about the government. The government, wherever you go in the United States, the government exists. There is government. We know the presence of government is there. There's the police. There is the the road, the toll, whatever there is. We know the presence of government. That's the Brahman feature. Now there is somebody controlling the government. Somebody who's making sure that people are getting justice. That's, let's say, the president. So he's at office, he's at the Oval Office, saying this is right, this is wrong, let's make this legislation, let's do this, let's do that. Now when Obama goes home to his wife and children, he's a father, he goes golfing, he has relationship, he has friends. That's the Bhagavan feature. the non-official feature. Does it make sense?
So what about a human soul? In this human soul, all these three energies are present.
The three characters, the eternal, cognizant, and blissful, Satchidananda, that's present. That's our true nature. And that's the nature of God as well. Except it's much more blown up. It's much more expansive. And ours is, it's like gold in a gold mine and gold in a ring. It's the same gold, it's just in different quantity. In God's case, it's more exhibited in a much larger scale. In our case, it's much smaller case. And we talked about in the yoga class about our eternal, blissful, and cognizant, how that relates to us.
Two questions.
Sure.
The word eternal means never, it never existed. I mean, never born, never dies.
Mhm.
So it's the same, right? You cannot have two different types of eternal. You cannot have two different types of cognizant because both have to know the same amount. I mean, I don't understand how somebody can be more eternal than the soul.
Yeah,
Eternal
so
means
soul is
eternal.
soul and Krishna, both are eternal.
Yeah.
Soul was never born, never dies.
So how do when you say exhibited on a greater scale, what do you mean? What does that mean?
So we have a soul, and let's say our cognizance is knowledge of our relationship with God. Okay? With Krishna, his cognizance is knowledge of every single living entity in the entire creation. So he knows everything that's going on in your heart, in his heart, in his heart, that rabbit outside, the grass, everything. He knows exactly what's going on. So much more blown up. We just know what we have in ourselves, our thoughts. He knows about everybody. I can go about all three of them if you want, but
Yeah.
to get you an idea. There's-
And what is the use of knowing the three features or the natures of the Bhagavan, Paramatma, and
So
Brahman?
different people get attracted to different features. The yogis, they worship, the Ashtanga yogis, they're more into the super soul. The Brahman features, the impersonalists, who don't believe God has a form. So for them, they worship that. Bhagavan is the Bhakti yogis, who are in devotional service, who want a relationship with God. And that is considered the highest because the happiness that is achieved with relationship with God is the highest compared to happiness at the Yogi Jnani platform or at the platform of the impersonalists.
Can I add something?
Sure.
With the Bhagavan feature in particular, it's important to understand what it is because once we recognize that everything is Krishna's energy, I mean, like this table. Yeah, this table's not Krishna, but it's his energy that's allowing it to manifest. So when we start to see everything in its relationship to Krishna, automatically the tendency to exploit will start to vanish because we realize that this is, this is actually God's property. This is his energy manifested in this particular way, or allowing it to manifest in this particular way. So it just helps to cultivate a God-conscious outlook.
You would get that from which of the three aspects?
Bhagavan, because it's complete. The others are true, but they're not complete. Bhagavan includes Satchidananda, so it's complete. And it's the easiest, also Bhakti Yoga is recommended because you can lead a very normal life and still include, you don't have to go to the Himalayas or hide in the cave meditating on your own. Rather, you can live a normal life, but as long as you connect everything back to God, God is the center of your life, you have that relationship. Because I love you, I want to give it to you. And that's how you see everybody, every living entity. It's like the wheel of a bicycle. If Krishna is in the center, and that's how they're all connected, all living entities are connected through the source. Then the relationship, the respect, I see you as part of God. I respect you more. I see water as a source of energy coming from God. I don't waste water. Right? I don't hurt animals. I don't waste anything. Not because there's some PETA guy that's going to scream at me, not because of that, but because I have a relationship with God. I don't want to do it. So it's a much more natural process. Relationship is very natural to us. We're all looking for love. We're all looking for happiness in relationships. So that comes from the ultimate relationship with Krishna. And if that relationship is there, everything nicely falls in place.
The four mistakes that we were talking about, like limited senses and illusion, and the fourth one, like I'm not getting it. The like cheating, like I have limited senses, so I make mistakes and I understand something different. So but how does cheating come into it? Like it may be the ignorant part of me,
Yeah.
but like. But deep within me, but I'm not cheating anyone. I'm just ignorant about a fact. How can that be termed as cheating someone?
Let's say you don't know anything about physics,
Mm-hmm.
but you refuse to believe
Mm-hmm.
that electrons, which are really tiny and have dual property as a wave particle as well as matter,
Mhm.
exists. I don't believe something like that exists. So when we make decisions like that, although we don't know about it, we don't want to cheat, but we're rejecting something that is. Right? So that mentality, and it's a loose translation from Sanskrit, but that mentality is more so the cheating propensity. That I am right. I don't care what others think. I don't want to know what the full picture is, but what I think is right. And that's what's referred to here.
And I'll share that conviction with others.
So you go on telling people like, oh no, this is wrong, that's wrong. And this is what I believe. Believe me. Any other questions?
God makes mistakes.
God makes mistakes? No. He is out of the four defects. And that's why we talked about, that's why we refer to the Vedic system, because a God-made system is beyond mistakes. Now, does that mean, so is it possible for us to attain a state where there are no mistakes? We don't have these four defects. Yes. Just like the father example, the father sees, the spoon is bent in this, but he doesn't see what the senses are telling him. He has the knowledge to back it up. So he can tell the child, it's not the spoon is bent, it's like what we're seeing, that's a refraction phenomenon. So when somebody has knowledge from the Vedas, which is not sourced from this world, which is not created, this is not man-made knowledge, then you can see things as they are. The Vedic knowledge is as it is. And then you don't make mistakes. Does it make sense? I mean, you can still make mistakes in this form, but the knowledge source is not mistake. That's not corrupt. And because, again, we'll talk about that in future lectures, that there's a succession, disciplic succession, how that knowledge comes down generation after generation without being changed. Yes?
When you said God, the personality form has desires,
Mm-hmm.
what are their desires? What are those desires?
Unlimited desires. Desire for relationship. Desire to please his people who loves him or he doesn't. Desire, like there are so many pastimes in Krishna's life, desire to decorate the cows, for example. Something very trivial like that, or something to, and I'm not going to go into that topic because it's we need to learn a little bit more to get there. But God has desires just like us, and it's a very normal reciprocation relationship. He desires to see us back to Godhead, to a natural position. I'm sorry, I know you came in late. What's your name?
Mindy.
Mindy? Nice to meet you.
Yes.
Sorry, we just went through it real quick. No questions? I really was hoping you would ask some questions today.
I was looking at this image.
The elephant has both eyes on the same side.
Really? Oh yeah. Well, I guess.
That's what I find funny.
Another thing that I missed actually, so we're talking about randomness, and so there was this example that was given, like people say that randomly some chemicals got together and created life, and so you can imagine this. take a watch apart and take all the screws and everything and throw it up in the air, what's the probability that it will fall down at the exact right spot and create another watch? And it'll be functional. And so now that's just a watch, which is a complicated machine, but this universe, the creation, is much more complicated than that. Even a cell, a single cell in a human body, is way more complicated than a watch. And so if we are saying that this is a random phenomenon, then that's again that elephant-like view. You're seeing things according to your time, space, and circumstance, and not recognizing the bigger picture. Something I forgot I asked Ed to remind me about that. Yeah, I think. Okay, if there are no other questions, we can have Prashant.